another episode of your favorite podcast, my favorite podcast, your mom's favorite podcast, your aunt's favorite podcast, your dog's favorite podcast. It's
Keep going. Keep going.
Dragons.
Cat's favorite podcast.
But your parrot hates this podcast. Do not play this podcast around your parrot. It will start screaming. It's Oops All Dragons, y'all. It's the podcast where we talk about D&D, and we don't actually play it, but we do talk about it for a long time, and because we can.
We've got opinions, and we have experts. I'm Faerun.
Speak for yourself. I wouldn't consider myself an expert.
I say we have experts who come on.
Such as returning guest and friend of the pod and friend of us all, Manda.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. We love to learn because, as we've said in the previous installment of this little series that we're doing on Faerun Forgotten Realms lore, is that what it is?
Just D&D
right?
lore in general, because Dragonlance and Eberron and all that stuff is technically their own separate thing from Faerun.
Right, but yeah, that's all folded into what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, if my questions haven't made it evident enough, I'm used to playing homebrew campaigns that I don't need to know who.
Because we're just making up the lore as we go.
Exactly. So, we got curious about the lore as written in the books, and Manda knows it, and she's here to tell us about it.
I am. I know so much. I know an annoying amount of information about the Forgotten Realms. And my husband is very glad that I'm here to talk to you and not at him anymore.
All right.
I love that. But before we get into the past, the fictional past, what about your real past? What have you been doing the last few weeks? What's up?
So, following up on the last time you were here, Amanda, I was getting ready for a Gundam modeling contest and building up some stuff for it with very ridiculous names, but that's not going to happen now because I'm dealing with some car troubles.
Oh.
So I'm stuck up here in North Florida.
You didn't get your bubblegum bazooka gun?
No, I did not get the Hyper Mega Bazooka launcher in time. The real name is almost as ridiculous. So that's been annoying. So I'm just stuck up here. Other than that, just things I've been doing in general. I think I vaguely mentioned it last time, but I'm wholeheartedly been running a Gundam RPG now with a bunch of Gundam nerds using the Mecha Hack system, and hopefully working to get an updated sheet into Roll20 so we can use that a little better. But regardless, it's really good. The Mecha Hack system does exactly what it needs to do for like a mecha game. It's pretty much the exact opposite of Lancer or Mechton Zeta or the Bubblegum Crisis systems or anything like that, because those are very crunchy. They have a lot of numbers, and the main thing I hate about them is that they split off the pilot and the mech as two separate things, which in a simulation sort of way would make sense. But if we watch like mecha anime and we like the things about it, that's what glorifies this stuff to us. The whole thing is the pilot and the mech working together, and that's what the system entails. Like if you're on foot or if you're in your mech, your stats are all the same. You and the mech are essentially one, and then we just play the game like that. It's super simple. It's got like 4 stats. It's just Roll20 up and down. Succeed or fail. The only difference is 20 is a natural failure and a 1 is a natural success.
Ooh.
So the lower you roll, that is actually the better. But other than that, yeah, it's super, super flexible. I just reskinned all the stuff in the book to be just Gundam themed, and then we just went with it and just having a bunch of Gundam nerds on there instead of just getting like, oh yeah, my character's, Boblin the Goblin. We always use him. And he's got green hair or he's got, glasses or whatever. I got like mini biographies from all 4 of them about how they're all conscripted Xeon soldiers in the war, and how one of them has a family, and another one comes from the new type labs and has a dark backstory. And it's like, none of this is going to come up in the game. Like, this is just a trial. I just wanted to see how this thing ran before I actually put some more effort into it, and none of this is going to come up immediately. But they're good. It's a good group, and yeah, they're actually gonna run with it. So, for any Gundam nerds out there, we're going to get to the end of the 1 year war and let them kind of decide where they're going to go from there. So that's been a lot of what I've been doing since then.
Yeah, so you've been keeping busy.
Mm-hmm.
As always.
I'm always busy.
How about you, Manda?
I just got off of an epic D&D session. I say just because we did end this morning. So if I sound a little tired, it's because I did not get much sleep. We're very fortunate. I think I talked about this when I was on the podcast for the first time, but we have a very excellent dungeon master. We do have the good fortune of playing every week, which I know is not the norm. But we had a really amazing session yesterday where we just emerged from the underground. You know when you're like playing and then you're like in a cave for a D&D like 4-day, but then that's actually like 4 months of your life. Mm-hmm. So yesterday we finally emerged back into the city, and it was mostly like one of those shopping episodes, but it's still wonderful to get like sunlight and to interact with the NPCs that we haven't seen in a while. And we're a very roleplay heavy campaign, so everyone had like moments.
And you guys are like ex-voice or ex-actors and that sort of thing, so you have a very, into it sort of group.
Oh my god, yes. I'm the only one in the group that wasn't like an actor like semi-professionally. So they all have like beautiful voices. I do some tonation for my character, but not I don't know. We have a lot of fun, and yes, it is very like character heavy, and my DM does all of the voices for the different people, and he's very good. I could gush about this forever, but that's been my recent history. Is I'm still in that like D&D high of like, I can't wait a whole week to play again.
Oh man, y'all play weekly?
Yeah. Like I said, we're so fortunate. We're like the unicorn of D&D campaigns.
Amazing.
Hey Lisa,
Wow.
Our campaign.
It's been months. Oh boy.
Our schedules are awful. Every time we get a chance to play, and then we're like, yeah, we just try like once a month, just like keep it up. And even then, like real life stuff comes up and blows up the game, and then we're on hold again.
It's always like we have 4 players and 5 including Faerun, and it'll always be like 3 of the PCs can make the session and 1 can't, and it's always like different combinations of people, and
we're at a point in the game, in the story, where I can't just cut someone out and say, they were doing something else. Like important stuff is happening,
right?
And I don't want to just leave someone out of that going on.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that actually we have 1 day. And if that day works out every week, it's great. But if anyone has a conflict on that day, it's impossible to reschedule. Yeah. Anytime we're like, oh no, we'll just play, and then you go through the whole week every day, and it's like, oh okay, no, we'll just wait till next week, I guess.
Yep.
I feel like someone needs to invent like a D&D app that does all the scheduling for you. Like I feel like I want like D&D map editors, and I want like new tools and stuff that like do spells. I know they have some cool stuff, but like more important than that, I need something that auto schedules.
Yeah, everybody inputs their schedule for the next month, and then the app will calculate what's the best day.
It just puts a D&D thing on your calendar, and that's when D&D's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
It finds when you have a 4-hour window, and it goes, this is when you're doing it.
I mean, my phone's listening to me all of the time, so can't it just tell me when I'm free, right?
No, it is. I swear to God. I one of the other things we were doing was watching through Frasier. I think I mentioned that a while back, and which great show from the 90s to early 2000s. Great, funny show. And as we're watching the show, an article on my phone comes up talking about oh, how the actors from Frasier, how they felt about this episode. That was, I'm like, well, I'm watching the show right now. Do not spoil this thing for me. Like, I only have to watch it once.
They know. They're listening. Our benevolent AI overlords.
What about you, Lisa?
Oh boy. It's been a time in Lisa Land. I'm coming up on my 1-year Elena-versary. Not gonna do anything for it. It's 1 year since I moved to Los Angeles. I'm gonna be at work because it'll be a Monday.
You'll celebrate by not driving on the 405.
I wish I had that much control over my life. But sometimes the siren call of the 405 is irresistible, and you simply have to throw yourself into the waves. But other than that, I've been doing some sewing, doing some reading. I'm currently listening to The Blood of Elves. It's, I think, the 3rd or 4th book in the Witcher series. Still waiting on Return of the King to come up as available on Libby. So that I can listen to that, so I can finish that. Realized that there's one more Earthsea book that I haven't listened to, so I'm going to I'm gonna look into that so that we can do our eventual Earthsea
Lisa rant for 2
jabbering
hours.
I don't know if I could do 2 hours.
We said that about the Vox Machina show, Lisa, and look what happened.
Well, the only thing about that, what happened with Vox Machina is that I had to give you a lot of context.
You're not going to give me context for Earthsea?
It was your fault.
And you're not going to give context for Earthsea.
I mean...
Context about, the writer, and then about the adaptations and how you hate them so much.
Of course I'm going to talk for, at least 45 minutes about what a queen Ursula Le Guin is, but that doesn't count. Anyways.
That's content. That's fine. We could just do a 2-parter. 2-part, just Lisa just goes off, and I just be quiet for 2 hours. I will chime in once in a while.
Yeah, if you ask too many questions, we'll just be here all day. Yeah, no, I haven't really been up to much of anything. So that's it. That's my report.
How are the Witcher books going? Have you seen the show versus the books or the games?
So, the first 2 books, they're sort of vignettes. Each chapter is sort of a vignette in Geralt's life, and it goes all over the timeline. And it's really just to introduce you to the world and to the characters and to some of the political intrigue of it. And then this book, it's heavy political intrigue. It gets introduced or it just gets brought to the forefront. And I'm seeing the themes of I think one of the themes that I've heard of in the books is that Geralt has this centrist morality, and how every situation he gets put in is really just rubbing his nose into the fact that that's not a good position to have. You have to pick a side, and picking no side is not actually this noble thing to do. Not picking a side is usually actively helping the bad guys,
helping the oppressors.
Yeah, and so it's I think the book that I'm in, I'm seeing some of the stuff from the show. The show is definitely they took the story and they completely restructured it, because it's not told in the same order. Not a lot of almost the entirety of the book is you're following Geralt around, and when you're not, it's usually you're following a person who is about to meet up with Geralt. It's the chapter I just got through. It started following Yaskir, the bard, who in the book is called Dandelion. But the person reading this audiobook is insisting on pronouncing it Dandelion, which, okay, I guess that's a choice. Coward. Coward. But, yeah.
I'm sad they didn't call him Dandelion in the show. Because they do in the game,
They do in the game.
Yeah.
That's why I always knew him as.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where they got Yaskir from. Maybe eventually it'll be revealed, but...
I think that's his proper name, and I think Dandelion was just like, his
stage name. Yeah.
I think Dandelion's more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he's like even more of a shithead in the books, which I love. It's very fun. Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's not as, and I think I've said this before, it's not as like War of the Roses political intrigue, Art of War kind of, not Art of War, War and Peace kind of thing as like Game of Thrones is. And it's obviously not as lighthearted and PG-13 as Lord of the Rings is. It's somewhere in between those two. And I think that that's like a fun, nice thing. You get like really fun moments that I think are really fun where like you'll have characters within this universe, hear Geralt talk about some creature and have them go, oh, that's not real, that's myth, that's a mythological creature. And he's just like, oh yeah, then what's this? And he like pulls a head out of a bag,
Yeah. I think they've done that a couple times on the show.
Yeah. And I love that. I love a show, I love and I think this is a good segue, I love a fictional world where even within the fictional world with all these fantastical creatures, there are, even those fantastical creatures, their existence is doubted. And yeah, I think that's fun. It's a good time.
Cool.
Speaking of mythological worlds and high fantasy bullshit, Manda, take it away.
I have such a story to tell you guys today. I am very excited about it. If you did not join us last time, we covered the creation of the universe and the goddesses Selûne and Shar, and how the planet of Abiur was created. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about the gods that inhabit that world. So as we covered last time, it kind of ended with a war. Selûne and Shar got into a bit of an argument. They had a battle that spanned across the universe over hundreds of years. And then in the end, they settled their dispute, and the world fell into this state of peace. Shantae, the god of the planet, sort of the Mother Earth type character, created life for the first time. And with that, she created things like simple sea creatures, algae, and plants. Over the millennia, they evolved into animals and fungi, and the creatures were as numerous as the stars.
Okay.
But while Shantae is going through her life creation story of deciding what plants and animals are going to look like, most of the gods are kind of focused on her and her world. They're deciding how they're going to influence this sphere. So you have the god of light and the god of dark, and then we also have the god of war and the goddess of poisons. And they're all kind of deciding how they're going to interact with this new place. While they're all distracted, this new god, Thazadun, who is the goddess of darkness, starts to sort of explore the galaxy. So most of the gods are really focused on Abiur because it's their place and that's where life's gonna begin. And he's like, I don't care much about that. So he goes to the far reaches of the galaxy and starts visiting all the dead worlds that the primordials have already destroyed. When he's on one of these dead worlds, he comes across this bit of metal. It's this shard that's in the ground, and when he goes to reach for the shard, it mentally consumes him. It turns out that this shard is a remnant from a different parallel galaxy, and it was left there as sort of a magical trap. So as soon as he touched it, his mind is overtaken by these creatures known as Oberonths. which are, if you think of like a Lovecraftian horror type character, they have like tentacles and spikes and horns, and like they don't even make like logical sense, but they are the physical embodiment of evil trying to reach in from another plane to take over the universe that Abigail Terrell inhabits. And Thazadun is sort of their gateway into this universe. Is they corrupt his mind, and they try to convince him to take the shard that he found and then leave it in the center of the universe so that they can slowly consume all of the planets and all of the gods in this space. Oberynths kind of travel from, like, classically, they like travel from universe to universe, eating all the power and energy, and once they destroy one place, they move to the next place. So Thazadun is completely insane. But despite the fact that he doesn't really have any of his faculties, he's like, I'm not going to do that. So instead of taking the shard to the center of the universe and killing all of his friends and family, he throws it to the edge of the galaxy. And he still tears a hole in reality, and Oberynths start crawling through that portal into I'm going to use the term our universe, and they like a few of them climb through this portal into the world that Abigail Terrell inhabits. And then the portal starts to fracture as it can't handle the energy of the two worlds colliding. And it sort of like becomes this vortex of darkness and evil, and it takes all of the few Oberynths that come through, it takes all of their power and all of Thazadun's energy to make this portal close. In fact, it creates such a damage to the universe that a new plane is created, and later they refer to that plane as the Abyss.
Oh.
So it's like this, it's like this hellish, if you don't know about the Abyss, it's like, it's basically hell. It's got like jagged spires and dark pools, and it is like a realm of not fire in the same way that Muspelheim is fire, but in the same way that you would imagine like dark, hellish energy. So Thazadun's hanging out in the Abyss with the Oberynths, and the Oberynths are like, okay, now that we're here, we're going to use Thazadun and we're going to take over the gods. But what they didn't anticipate is when that portal was created, Thazadun sort of consumed all of that energy. So not only did they create like this person that they infused him with energy. So he became like this all-powerful deity of the Abyss. He could like wield the power of this realm now. So they were hoping he would be sort of a puppet and they could kind of like Muppet him around and make him do things. Mm-hmm. But what they really did is create a very insane, very angry, very powerful god. So almost immediately the Oberynths and Thazadun start fighting each other. And Thazadun takes all of this energy that he's gotten from this plane, the new abysmal plane, and he starts creating creatures to send after to kill the Oberynths. And these creatures have horns and fangs and claws and wings, and he basically invents demons.
Wow.
And he fills the abysmal plane with demons. They said the demons were there's such a multitude of them that they created like waves upon waves of creatures to attack these Oberynths. In the same way of like, you see that like zombie mountain that's very popular in culture now, where they're like climbing over each other, but they're all demons. And it does almost nothing to the Oberynths. They're caught in a stalemate as they're trying to attack each other over like ownership of the prime material plane. And then we cut to like the other gods. They have no idea this is happening. They're like, oh look, she made purple algae. Oh, so cute. But we'll come back to them in a second.
Okay.
But that's what they're doing now. But the primordials started to notice. If you remember, the primordials, if you didn't join us last time, are basically creatures that have always existed. They're like the physical embodiments of tornadoes or like lava flows. They're not good, they're not evil, but they are forces of destruction. And they were like, hey, I feel like something's being destroyed and I'm not a part of it. And I'm not cool with that.
Someone's horning in on my racket.
And they're like, what's this giant new plane of existence? So they all like go to the abysmal plane, and Thazadun convinces them to fight for him. He's like, if you help me destroy these Oberonths, we will come together and we will wreak such chaos that the universe has never seen before. And they're like, well, I like that. So now we have,
Sign me up.
right? Sign me up, coach. So they have the Primordials and Thazadun fighting against the Oberonths, and they're actually doing quite well. And then, unfortunately, the other gods are like, did you guys make a new plane? Because I didn't make a new plane.
Whose plane is this?
Right, whose plane is this? Who left a plane here? So they leave Abaturel, and then they travel over to the Abysmal Plane, and they see Thazadun fighting with the Primordials, which are like their natural-born enemies. So they immediately start fighting against Thazadun. They can tell that he's mad, so he's like not even himself anymore. So the gods start what is known as the Dawn War, which is Thazadun and the Primordials versus the primal gods. So these are like Saloon and Shar, and the god of war, and the god of disease. Goddess of disease. And from this conflict, most of the other gods are born. So there are gods too numerous to list that exist in this time. Basically, if you have a god and they don't have an origin story, like this is the time. Because back in the before times, before things get complicated, basically every time a god bled, every time you cut them or they were, in some cases, they lost a limb, that piece of them became a new god.
Okay, I was going to ask, what are the mechanics of creating a god?
They get more complicated later. As I mentioned last time, every rule in D&D, every bit of folklore has like an asterisk and then 3 footnotes. So right now, if you hurt a god, they become more gods.
Okay.
Very Hydra-like.
Okay.
But it's almost like if you hurt a god, that god loses an aspect of themselves, and that becomes an entire god of that aspect.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
They could have also, in this time, been intentionally creating other gods, because they were also at war, so they could have been increasing their numbers just to have people to fight.
Okay.
A few of the notable gods that are born during this time are most of the patron gods of the player classes. So Io, the god of dragons, which I'll talk more about in a minute. Moradin, god of the dwarves. Yolanda, god of halflings. Garl Glittlegold, god of the gnomes. Grumish, god of the orcs. Amun Allfather, god of giants, and Corellin Lathander, the god of elves, and then many, many others. But if you have like a patron deity of your D&D player class, it was probably born around this time, with a few exceptions. And all of those gods have their own robust history, which I will cover at another time. But I do have one story that stands out as my favorite, and I actually talked a bit about this last week, is the god Io. So Io is the god of dragons. He is known as like the only platinum dragon, which is, there are conflicting stories about that, but basically, especially today. But the god Io was a fantastic fighter. He could mow through primordials. He just imagine the largest dragon that has ever existed, the most powerful dragon that's ever existed. But he was a little prideful. He wasn't being very careful during the Dawn War. He was just obliterating primordials right and left until he went to fight the King of Terror, Eric Hus. And that was a giant, it doesn't say what type of primordial he is, but this particular primordial had a giant adamantine axe, and he cleaved Io directly in two. And from those two halves of Io, they both immediately stood up and started fighting again. And they became Tiamat and Bahamut, is the two halves of the dragon. So you have the chromatic dragons and the metallic dragons, and at this point in time, they fought together. There's a footnote with this story saying that this is really the only time the two have ever cooperated in history, was in an attempt to bring about the downfall of the primordials. Bigger fish to fry, sort of thing. Yes. Well, also, they had no reason to be in conflict. They were literally the same being until moments before that. True. So I have not read about it yet, but I do plan to do some research about like, hey, where'd your beef start? Like that's your brother, man. Like why?
And yeah, I read Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. I want to talk about the dragon gods because there's a lot going on there, and yeah, I want to get into that one, but later. Yeah.
Yes, we definitely will. But they don't go into a whole lot of detail. But basically, the primal gods, they win the day. They fight against the primordials, and then they take Thazadun, and they can't kill him because he's like their brother, and he's mad. So instead of that, they lock him into the abyss forever, and they strike his name from history. I don't necessarily feel like that's a better solution. That still seems very unkind to me.
Like, he still might be doing some terrible things down there because he's a god with this crazy amount of power and doesn't know how to control it.
Right? And they locked him in the realm where he's more powerful.
Where he's most powerful, yeah.
I have so many problems with this, but I do have a theory that I'll touch on in a later episode. I think they did something sneaky here.
Okay.
But that conflict ends, and they lock Thazadun away. But the primordials are a little bitter because they're like, I wanted a war of epic chaos. I wanted to reign through the galaxy, destroying more things. So just to be petty, on their way out, Dendar the Night Serpent comes and he leaps into the sky and devours the sun. Right? And without any light or warmth, everything dies on Abir Terrell. So all of that fighting to save life on this planet, and then at the last second, he's like, nah, and he destroys the sun.
Wow.
And everything dies. So they refer to this part in history as the Shadow Epoch. There's also a little bit of conflict in this area because if everything died, who is telling this story?
That's yeah. First question.
Can I backtrack for a second?
Sure.
When they chain Thazadun in the abyss, that's when he becomes. Is that why he's known as the Chained Oblivion? Is that the same guy?
I don't know. I know there is a god that is chained up under the ground that is like the chained one, but I don't know if that's Thazadun. Because I think they strike his name from history, and the next time we hear from him, he has a different name. That I do not know. I would be happy to look into that.
Okay.
There's a lot of chaining up gods, so it could be him, it could be another god, but I'll definitely take that one away.
So I just want to get this right in my head. Tharizdun and Thazadun, two different guys.
I might just be pronouncing it Thazadun. Tharizdun. In my defense, I have never heard any of these things out loud.
That's true.
I did find a guide on the internet to pronounce Obolith, but Thazadun or Tharzadun I have not pronounced. So I apologize if this entire time you've been yelling at me through your podcast app.
you
it could be Tharzadun. Yeah.
D&D nerds. You just didn't say it right. Like, man.
Shut up.
She didn't pronounce the name of the long dead deity that's been struck from history correctly.
It's Bahamut, not Bahamut.
Bahamut, yeah.
It's Baja Blast, okay?
Oh, sorry. I'm imagining Tiamat mocking Bahamut, but calling him Baja Blast. Whatever, Baja Blast. They're like honestly, teenagers at this point.
Yeah.
I'm imagining like a paladin of Bahamut calling his like whatever divine strike as I'm gonna
the Baja Blast.
Yeah. I'm writing that down. For some reason, now all of a sudden I want to play paladin.
For some reason, I'm imagining this paladin is like a surfer. For some reason, he's got like a surfboard.
Oh God, that's his holy weapon.
He's a skater. And his goal is to invent
the half
bad
pipe.
tacos.
Oh, you're right. Oh God.
Taco Bell themed paladin.
That's an idea.
I think there should definitely be a D&D god of tacos. Or just canonically, Bahamut, big fan of tacos.
Yeah, it's just part of justice and tacos.
But after Dendar the Night Servant comes in and he devours the sun and kills everything on Abir-Turel, speaking of Bahamut and Tiamat, they're looking at Abir-Turel and they're like, since everything's dead already, do you mind if we just reorganize real quick? He was like, because this is a mess. You have no idea what you're doing. And they kind of go through the planet and they look at everything and they're like, well, you see, it's chaotic for this reason. This is where you made your mistake. You have some things that are too light and you have some things that are too dark, and they conflict with each other. So they took anything that was too light and then they kind of cast it into one realm, and they took anything that was too dark and they cast it into another realm, and they made the prime material plane mostly neutral and balanced. But when they cast the light and the darkness aside, those aspects made their own realms. So the light made the Feywild, which is like a more magical than average place. The colors are more vibrant there, the creatures are more magical, and then all of the darkness coalesced into a realm that eventually became known as the Shadowfell, which is like, it has its own thing, but it's more like gray. But they are actually direct copies of Abir-Turel. So even though the Feywild has its own aspects, like when they were copied, the continents would have been the same, and some of the cities would have been the same. So if you travel in the Faerun even today, and the prime material plane, there are mirrored aspects of things will be identical in both places, which I just think is generally really cool. Yeah. Is to have 3 versions of the same place with their own flavors.
Yeah. So why is it that Bahamut and Tiamat are the ones who reorganize everything versus the other gods, or do they not exist anymore?
It's actually really interesting because this bit of folklore comes from the Fizban Book of Dragons, and it's fairly new. Previous to this moment, they said that the primordials did it, which in my mind never made any sense, because the primordials are all about like, oh, look over that, let me smash that to bits. And the idea of them like meticulously organizing things to be like, no, I think there's no, that never made any sense to me. So I don't know if this is a moment where Wizards of the Coast is like reorganizing their content to be like, hey, we wanted to make this change, so we're gonna like give Bahamut and Tiamat like more emphasis in the beginning of time, or if they were like, hey, we said it was the primordials, but it doesn't make any sense, so we're gonna rewrite history, or what have you. I think we mentioned last time that if you look at this story from the dragon's perspective, Bahamut and Tiamat have existed forever, and Io never existed. So they were like primordials, and I think that might be their way of being like, oh no, we said it was primordials, and Bahamut and Tiamat are primordials, so we were always right.
I do have Fizban's pulled up. I love the little quotes from Fizban talking about like the gods and the creation of the universe. So most dragons aren't what you call pious. To really embrace religion, one must believe one needs help. And Fizban talking about shapeshifting. The time a dragon spends in humanoid form is not directly related to our opinion of said form. In fact, dragons generally disagree with mortals about visual taste. Most of you are extremely misguided. Looking glasses have not helped. He's the snappiest platinum dragon god I have ever seen.
Do you know who Fizban is?
No.
Okay, so Fizban is one of my favorite characters, and doubly so because he isn't originally from the Forgotten Realms campaign.
Okay.
Fizban is Paladin, which is the god of good in the Dragonlance campaign.
Okay.
Dragonlance has much fewer gods. And actually, so just a little tangent. So Paladin is the god of good, and Takissis is the god of evil in the Dragonlance campaign. Paladin is Fizban, that kooky man writing the excerpts in the book. Mm-hmm. And Takissis is Tiamat.
They talk about that in the book when you go into the god section of like all of the draconic gods exist across all universes, just in different forms and different names. And they kind of experience all of the different realities kind of simultaneously. So that's how they kind of have foreknowledge of certain things, or they know things that have happened in different realities, and then that sort of thing. And that's why Fizban kind of writes the book the way that he does.
Yes, absolutely. Which is something like really exciting for just D&D in general, because it seems like they're trying to create like this multiverse aspect.
Yeah.
So the idea that Tiamat can also be Takhisis, and sort of implying that they're the same person, also works for a few other gods even within the Forgotten Realms. Is there are some gods that died and then they appear later, or some gods that like exist across multiple places. So if you think about it, we have like the god of the moon, and then we have the elven god of the moon.
Exactly.
And some of those are probably the same goddess, but maybe
Sun
different
god,
aspects. Or
Sun gods, Paylor, all the ones.
So I think this makes the lore really rich, because you're like, oh, I can kind of combine these stories together to make like one overarching deity. But then it also like opens up the content so that you can play different modules. So I don't know. I think it's brilliant to be able to like enjoy content from different campaign settings, but also make it canonical kind of with this one snippet of a sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have to, invent from whole cloth like how you're trying to connect this. No. There's this entire story, and I can refer back to that, and yeah, there's the same guy. It's the same dude.
Yes. And Fizbin, if you enjoy Fizbin, I would highly recommend reading some of the Dragonlance novels, particularly the Dragons of Autumn Twilight is the first book in the series. Fizbin is a recurring character throughout the whole series, and he is very funny throughout the whole thing.
I think I read a little bit about it. Does he start out as a dragon and then become like a human for a while and then just joins the party or something?
You don't know who he is. I spoilers, and I apologize. You don't know who he is for a lot of the series. He's just basically like Gandalf if Gandalf was bad at being a wizard.
Gandalf type of character. He just kind of shows up.
He's always trying to cast Fireball, but it doesn't work out. He'll like cast Featherfall instead. He's always like, and they play it like he's always very confused. Like he doesn't remember how magic works, but he's like this divine, powerful being. Yeah, he's like, I used to know this spell. Yeah, all right, I guess, and it always works out in the weirdest way, and you don't really know why for most of it. And he's fantastic. He appears randomly and then disappears randomly, and he becomes like this kooky, reoccurring guy. So I would highly recommend that book.
Might take a look at that one.
But like all D&D knowledge, this particular story that I've outlined today actually has like an in-game source, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong. These are Sarakan tales, which is an ancient prehistoric lizard people. So I think it's one of the terms they use for the dinosaur class, which is cute, because then like the first creatures on Abitrail were also dinosaurs. But then, like, if they all died when Dead Are the Night Servant ate the sun, how do they remember? But also, like...
So how did life come back after the sun was eaten and whatnot?
That I will cover next time, because I actually have a whole new shtick to talk to you about when I come back. I'd love to cover all of the player races, the creation of all of the different, the elves and the dwarves and whatnot, because they have a fantastic story.
They have all their own things, I assume.
I cannot wait to tell you about why Grummish deserves to be so angry.
He's the god of the orcs, right?
He's the god of the orcs, and he is so justified. They are so mean to him. Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
So up till now, we've got, just to like brief recap, the primordial gods are here. They're like, here's this place, let's like figure out what to do with it. And then one guy goes off and he's like, I don't care, and he gets involved with like the mob from out of town, and then they try to convince him to like, yeah, bring us into your town, and he's like, no. And then everybody else is like, whose dog is this? And then there's a war, and then the dragon gets split in two. That's Bahamut and Tiamat, and they're like sibling rivalry. And then they're like, your cabinets are a mess. I'm going to clean this up.
Yes,
like, okay.
Yes.
Everybody's okay. Do whatever you want. This is a dead planet anyways. And then I lost track of what happened after that.
And then that's it. And then next time we pick up, we'll be talking about how they spoiler alert, they bring the sun back. And then they start about the creation of the creatures that will ultimately inhabit the earth.
Okay. So that's the story textually. What's the who came up with all of this? What's the out of game in real life? How did this all sort of?
So a lot of this came from 4th edition. The sources that I used for these stories were the Demonomicon, which, I mean, points for excellent naming there. The Forgotten Realms Campaign Guide, which I talked about last time. Grand History of the Realms, and the Complete Book of Elves has some prehistory history. All of this is still before the beginning of time, so the information is still fairly... Yeah, there's no recorded time yet. I'll tell you when we start getting into year dates. So this is even technically rumor. But most of this content was 3.5 and 4.0. So it's unlikely that maybe Ed Greenwood had some of this in his mind, but they probably wrote this after the fact. And a lot of this information comes from the Demonomicon, which was released in 4.0. So I think someone wanted to create a more robust history for both the Abyss and also for demons. And I didn't even cover, I could spend 4 episodes just covering the content from the Demonomicon. There are some high-arcing figures in that war that I didn't talk about. So if you're interested in demons, or if your campaign's very demon-focused, I would highly recommend picking up that book, as they have some really cool characters that you could use, especially if you're... And I think they're all still around because they're demons that don't really age. So you can pull in some of those cool folks. The fight with Thazadun, he has generals, and he's none of the Albalists have names. They're all kind of faceless evil, but he's got some really cool demons in his army that you can use.
Are they the big kind of named demons that show up in the levels of hell and that sort of stuff?
I'm not too sure. I haven't gotten... I'm woefully underrepresented in modern Faerunian lore, but I plan to get there. I will answer your question when I am more up to date.
Because I know Tiamat also resides in the Nine Hells now, but how she got there, I have no idea.
Yeah, I still want to look into that, because it could be that she just never leaves the Abyss, is that she's born in the Abyss and then she just stays that's just part of her personality. She's like, no, I like it here. See you guys. But maybe not. I look forward to researching that more.
Okay, so creation of the universe, destruction of all life, and then next time we'll bring back all life. I do, but before we leave, I do want to leave with one more great Fizzbang quote. I'm just looking at the book, and I love this one. I know I didn't make dragon turtles, and Tiamat swears she didn't. So where'd they come from? More importantly, why?
Well, if I didn't make dragon turtles, if Tiamat didn't make dragon turtles, then who's driving the car?
Yeah, okay. I think we could call this an episode. This is a good one. So Amanda, where can folks find you?
If you'd like to hear me talk about something completely different, then you can check me out on the Taste of Dragons podcast. We talk about video games and video game news and video game sandwiches. Yep. Video game sandwiches. We are at Taste of Dragons on Twitter, on Discord, on Twitch, on Instagram, and basically anywhere else they will allow us to be. Check us out at Taste of Dragons.
So you're already listening to us, so you probably know where to find us. But if you're listening to this on some sort of third-party thing, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Twitter at Oops All Dragons. Same thing, Instagram. Similarly to Amanda's side, anywhere they'll let us be. We have an at Oops All Dragons. Look us up and follow us for when new episodes come out.
And if you see something, say something. If you find an unattended plane of existence, do not alert the closest security officer. Somebody will come and take care of it.
Alert the nearest god. They'll know what to do.
Nearest gods, and it will be taken care of. Thank you so much. As always, have a good night. Bye.
It's the middle of the day.
Oops All Dragons is a group effort. Our show is edited by Noel Hernandez, our theme was composed by Brendan Lyons, and our logo art is by Azif On Q. Links to more of their work and their social media will be in the show notes. Find us on YouTube and Spotify, and check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Oops All Dragons.